Hello and welcome back to another Raw Sport Quaran-Stream. I am your head of sport, Josh Sim. Thank you for waiting patiently, because normally we start at 3, but new setup as I've left as I've left Warwick and with the student travel window going on at the moment. So new setup, so it took a bit of time to just get it a little sorted, but I think we've got something good for you now, and we'll be on live for an hour and a half or so, chatting all the latest football news as usual, going through some of the Champions League results this week, some of the Premier League results as well. Before I bring on my guest and we start to talk about all the football stuff, obviously in the video description, all our social media links. Feel free to like and subscribe to the channel, like the video, share it, all that good stuff. Excuse me. We have some interesting stuff as well going on at the moment. We had an interview with women's cricket with Warwick, with Kenneth Gordon, who's the social secretary of Warwick's women's cricket team. That went live on Wednesday. We pre-recorded on Tuesday, so that is up there for people to check out as well. So it's available on our podcast feed. So if you listen to your podcast on Spotify, if you listen to it on Apple, Google, however you listen to podcasts, you can listen to it in audio form there as well. And we do have an interview next week, and I don't think I've told anyone. I've sort of alluded to some people but I haven't actually said it. So I will, let me just announce it. Let me just announce who I talked to. And full disclosure, we recorded the interview on Tuesday, so it will, maybe some of the stuff we talk about might be a little outdated, especially with so here is big announcement. The Raw Sport interview next week is with Dan O'Hagan, who is a football commentator. You would have heard his voice on the Bundesliga. You'd heard his voice he does the Chinese Super League as well, and Champions League and Europa League games as well. So he was very fortunate to give me half an hour of his time on past Tuesday. So we had a chat, and so we pre-recorded it, and then so that will drop next week at 3 p.m. Probably on Wednesday. And also we're planning a lot of end of 2020 sort of sports content as well. So be sure to just kind of follow all our social media, keep an eye on that, and we will announce them when they drop. But yes, my conversation with Dan O'Hagan comes out next week. So he talks about, what it's like to be a commentator during this pandemic, the work that goes into it, the preparation. He's a Wolves fan, so we talk a little bit about Wolves and his idols growing up, Steve Ball and the like, and some comments about the Bundesliga as well. So it was a really interesting, really enjoyable chat. So that is coming up next week. So with that all said, let's bring on the newly chosen Raw Sport deputy. Ben Parkinson is with me. So there we go. Ben, how are you?
Afternoon, Josh. Yep, I'm very well, thank you. Different environment, but still the same show and the same stuff to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. Full disclosure to people who watch, week 10, I guess, is also going to be different. It's going to be interesting. Moving parts, obviously, and people are going to be in different settings. So we'll try our best. It may be that some of our content we record the week after term finishes, just because deadlines and all that kind of stuff, people traveling home and such. So just everyone, be aware that might happen. But let's go through the news first. And we haven't really been on air to talk about Diego Maradona's passing. It's the first time we've sort of acknowledged on air. Obviously, one of the greatest, some might say the greatest footballer of all time. Certainly in that top 3, top 4 for sure. Ben, obviously you and I were not old enough to watch Maradona in his pomp, playing regularly, but you sort of see it in current players these days, don't you? The legacy that he had, the skills that he kind of pioneered, you see it in players today. So what sort of legacy do you reckon Maradona leaves behind with the unfortunate news of his passing?
Yeah, I think really you can see how much of an inspiration and how important and big his legacy is from the gestures and response that all the players have taken. You hear about obviously Napoli Stadium, you hear about the possibility of some of the number 10 shirts that he played for, the clubs he played for, retiring those shirts. And I think that really shows the legacy he's had. He's been an inspiration to players of our generation, such as in particular Messi and Aguero. Being closely related to those two as well, and with Aguero's father-in-law. So yeah, it's had a massive impact on everyone. I think all young aspiring footballers, will still now look at videos of Maradona. It's all about Diego Maradona, the turn, his low center of gravity, everything that he did is still massively relevant in football. And I think he is one of the greatest ever, if not the greatest. Only behind the likes of probably Pele, Messi, both Ronaldos. So he is up there with all of them, and he'll always be remembered. So yeah, I think his legacy's massive, and we're starting to see that with all these massive gestures that are happening.
Yeah, it was quite interesting to see the reaction. Obviously, he is a global icon, so obviously there was reaction from all corners of the world. It's very interesting to see the different tones. I guess the British press, obviously the English smarting from the World Cup defeat, I think in '86 or so. Hand of God, but also that amazing individual goal beforehand as well that people I feel like it's sort of overshadowed because of the hand of God. Compared to, as you said, Napoli, obviously there's quite an emotional connection between Maradona and the city, and obviously as you alluded to, they've renamed their stadium in honor of the number 10. Obviously Argentina as well, I think they had several national days of mourning. I'm not quite sure how many, but I know that they definitely they made that happen. So yeah, it is it's unfortunate. He is a legend of the game, fantastic player. I know, obviously, as I said, you and I didn't watch him play, so it's kind of hard for us to speak about, our experiences of watching him. But certainly the legacy thing is something I thought would be interesting to talk about, because you see it in terms of the modern game. So yeah, obviously there's been quite a few things that have happened elsewhere that we haven't talked about. Obviously this weekend fans are back in stadiums. We saw talking about the UK and talking about England specifically, we saw Arsenal fans back in the Emirates for their game against Rapid Vienna on Thursday. We're going to see Chelsea fans at home to Leeds are going to be there. West Ham United tonight. There's going to be fans in West Ham at the London Stadium as well, and several grounds across the country as well. And you see it in the lower divisions as well, Championship, League One, all that. There's been fans kind of being allowed to come in. So, Ben, obviously, the team you support, Manchester United, obviously they're in Manchester in tier 3, so they're not able to bring in fans. But were they, let's say hypothetically, they were able to, how ready would you be to go and watch a game personally as a fan?
Personally, as a fan, I'd be edging to get back. I think it's a massive thing. It's a massive thing for football. I think we have lost this connection, through no fault of our own, obviously, with COVID. It's just prevented, and I think it is a big loss. I think for the players and both the fans. I think football needs fans, and fans need football. So I'd 100% straight away try and see if I can get a ticket and go and everything, but obviously within regulations and things like that. But it was interesting to hear, some of the managers come out and say, right, it should be all fans or no fans, and it's an unfair advantage. And I just think, in this situation that we're in, you've got to take your biased, cap off and just think back to March. If we could take fans, going to these stadiums and to watch games, for whatever club, then we take it. Because like I said before, football is nothing without its fans. And if I take my Man United hat off, I think it's so important that there are fans there at other games, and not just for the footballers in the actual game, just for those fans to have something. If for anyone who's watched the Sunderland documentary, you'll understand how important football is to them, and how important football is to so many people. So by so many people being able to go back, and of course it's not maximum numbers and things like that, but just to have some people go back, I look at it from the perspective if it's important for those people just as much as it's important for the game. So I think, you know, that's really important to remember. And I do understand why the managers, you know, say it's perhaps a bit unfair with you know, advantages going different ways, and I get that. That is true. But I think, you know, when you think back to March and think how lucky we are that we can have football on now, and football with fans back, then we got to take whatever we can get.
Yeah, I feel like, you know, you can see, I mean, watching some of the news reports, you can see sort of the reaction to people being allowed. It is sort of, there are, I mean, we talk about Maradona and Napoli having an emotional connection, likewise fans and going to the football and that sort of routine, there's sort of a emotional there has been an emotional reaction. And so it's been, yeah, it's very heartwarming. Obviously, you know, as you alluded to, it's unfortunate that it's not allowed everywhere in the country, and as you know, as you've said, some teams have not been too pleased about not having their fans. And you know, I think Neil Harris of Cardiff alluded to it a few days ago about, because I think Cardiff are not allowed to have fans, and so yeah, I mean, there is sort of risk of competitive advantages, I guess. I you know, I mean, it can go both ways, I guess, because I saw Charlton had a game in the Championship, and their fans turned against them, and so Lee Bowyer, their manager, he was almost as if, you know, why this didn't benefit of, obviously the fans coming benefited them, but like the fact that, you know, they weren't fully in support of the team didn't benefit them as well. So it has its pros and cons, but I think, as you said, yeah, it's a really fantastic thing. Hopefully it comes back, and yeah, I mean, it's super exciting for everyone involved, and yeah, I feel like, well, I mean, what have you made of sort of there's been a few kind of regulations that have sort of been in the press. Obviously, fans are not allowed to sing. You can only hug those that are in your bubble. To name two of the sort of regulations that have come out. What have you made of the sort of code of conduct and whatever's been come out recently as well?
You know, it's interesting because there's of course the, you know, you look at it and say that's not really, you know, some people would say, why is there even a point in having fans if you can't sing, if you can't hug, and you know, all of that stuff. But you know, that, like I said before, I think you just kind of got to take what you can get with the whole you know, with these like code of conduct and things. And I think the fact that, you know, even if there is a code of conduct, you might sit there and think, oh, that is a shame, but I still want to go to that game and I still want to see my team play football, because, you know, primarily that's what you're there to do. So I think, you know, the code of conduct, it's there to just, you know, make sure people keep safe, you know, and I think that it's smart. So I think hopefully things will get, you know, more and more loose now with everything that's going on with COVID and vaccine and things like that. So hopefully that will just mean, you know, this is the first basis, and then things will just get better and better and better, and we can get more and more back to normality in terms of, you know, everything and football.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, fingers crossed everything kind of continues to trend positively and we can see more people in the stands. Absolutely, yeah, for sure. What else? There was an interesting thing, and I guess we'll talk about the Man United PSG game in a bit. But post game, Messi told ESPN that, I misspoke. Neymar told ESPN that he really wanted to play with Messi next season, which kind of fueled speculation that maybe PSG would be a likely destination for Lionel Messi, which is an interesting one, I guess, given, you know, and I saw Guillaume Balaguer and Julien Laurent were talking about it on BBC 5 Live, and they were saying how maybe Mbappe would have to be sold, and maybe Angel Di Maria as well, to facilitate such a move, just given his wages and all that kind of stuff. So Messi to PSG, obviously, you know, he becomes a free agent in the summer. I think in a couple of months he's able to start talking to clubs about a pre-summer agreement, a pre-contract agreement. So Messi and Neymar at PSG, what are your thoughts on that happening? And is it realistic that that's like a move like that could happen?
I think with PSG's budget, I think it's definitely possible. You know, whatever way you look at it, getting Lionel Messi on a free is still ridiculously expensive. people talk about, okay, what about shirt sales? They could get it back, and you don't understand how many shirt sales you would need to achieve to make that money, his wages back. So it is a very, very expensive deal to pull off, but it's PSG, they can do that. So I think it is potentially realistic. I think I look at it from two perspectives. In the perspective of Lionel Messi, I think it is not a good move. I think that is almost a step backward. If we're being realistic, the French league isn't that competitive. I think it's it's called the Farmers League for a reason. I think it would be a step back in Lionel Messi's career if I'm honest. But then again, you don't know what goes on behind closed doors. You understand it's extremely difficult for him right now in Barcelona. So if PSG is financially the only move he can get, then I understand why he'd take it. I also think there could be, something he likes there with winning the Champions League with PSG. If he was the one to bring the Champions League to Paris Saint-Germain, then that would be instrumental. He would be remembered for that. That's probably the only piece of history you can actually create at PSG, which is why I don't think it's a good move. But if he went there and did that, then he has created history. And, Lionel Messi is once again the legend that he already is. So, I think from those two perspectives, it works quite well. A front three of Messi, Mbappe, and Neymar, if they kept all of them, is almost like a FIFA or Football Manager kind of dream. So that would be pretty incredible to watch. But yeah, I think for Lionel Messi, I'm not a big fan of these rumors.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see how many teams are able to make a move for Messi. I mean, we know Manchester City. We've heard the rumors about him linking, obviously, Pep Guardiola. He has a relationship with some of the sporting directors that came from Barcelona and some of the executive staff, as well as obviously the coaching staff at City. So we've heard City for a while. PSG now thrown in the ring. Those are realistically probably the only two teams you could see getting Messi. With that, am I right in saying that?
Yeah, 100%. I think financially they're the only two who can do it. Just because of you look at probably and other teams like that. The other two teams who maybe financially could compete would be Real Madrid and Manchester United. Real Madrid, it's got obvious reasons not going to happen, and Manchester United, their money doesn't go into the transfer budget. That's all I'll say. So I think that realistically it is just going to be kind of competing between Man City or PSG, although staying at Barcelona is very much an option. Depends on their appointments and what happens between now and the end of the season. So it's an interesting one, and we'll have to see.
Yeah, I'll throw Juventus's name in the ring as well. Potentially, obviously, they'd have to massively, clear up a fair few number of names to make it happen. But I guess they could potentially make a move for him as well. I mean, it's those three really, plus staying at Barcelona. That's really his options. So. Yeah, it should be. I mean, it'll be one we'll monitor over the next coming, over the next second term, surely. And if there's no news by then the third term, absolutely, because this is something that I don't think is going to go away for a while. So, just want to get your thoughts, because Neymar was quite confident in saying he wanted to play with Messi next season. So, who knows? Maybe he's angling for a move back to Barcelona, which would be quite the shocker, indeed. Other pieces of news, obviously, I don't know if this is news by now, but obviously Jurgen Klopp versus the scheduling of the Premier League and the 5 subs. He's taken aim at both. So I don't know if we've addressed this on air. So I thought it'd be a good quick way to kind of get your thoughts on this. Let's start with 5 substitutions. Are you in favor of this, or are you not in favor of this? And I mean, I know you're just put into context for people, obviously you are a Man United supporter. This would be perceived as sort of a big club advantage, at least to some people that's perceived as a big club advantage. Well, anyway, do you understand that argument, or do you still feel like because of player welfare, 5 substitutions should be implemented as soon as possible?
I mean, I really do understand both sides to the story. I think I completely understand why why smaller clubs would feel that they're at a disadvantage, because the fact of the matter is they will be at a disadvantage. However, for me, and people take this in a biased point of view because I do support Man United, but I think that there does need to be 5 subs, because I think, yes, you don't want to give an advantage to a team, but this is affecting players' mental and physical well-being with this fixture list. And 5 subs, if that is something that can just ease a little bit of pressure off of that, then I think it needs to happen. It was interesting what Jurgen Klopp said, because I did agree. He said to quote him, he said he'd take off Robertson and then put on Tsimikas, and that's not a tactical change. That's literally just to say Robbo. So I completely get why he'd why he'd want 5 subs, because that makes sense. He's just protecting a player. Tsimikas is not going to offer anything that Robertson can't offer, which makes sense. But I think it's really in these small. And if you're winning 3-0, it makes sense. Of course, you're going to rest players. But I think he didn't think of the scenario. If he's 2-0 down to West Ham, for example, he's gonna use some 5 subs, and they're not just going to be saving players. He's going to be keeping his best players on, or changing things up, or formation wise and things like that. So I really do see both sides of the story. I think it's really difficult personally, just for me, because I think, I don't know, I've done a lot of looking into players' mental and physical well-being. I study psychology, so I'd like to see 5 subs just to protect that, because I think this fixture list isn't going to get any smaller, if any more. It's going to stack up more, and then with the Euros next year and everything like that, I want to see players protected. So for me, I think 5 subs would be the right thing to do.
Yeah, it's a long-term thing, isn't it? I guess in the short term there'll be a competitive advantage, but looking long-term wise, 5 subs might be the way to go. And obviously, there's been certainly teams have been inflicted with a lot of injuries. To name I can't name in English. Obviously, Liverpool we know of has been hit by injuries. To name an example, in Germany, obviously Dortmund are struggling to get enough subs together for first team games. So it's a problem that's affecting everyone. And so, yeah, I feel like for the long term, 5 subs is probably the way to go. On to scheduling and the whole Wednesday to Saturday kind of the limited rest period, I guess, Champions League teams tend to get. And obviously the need for broadcasters to have those teams shown in sort of prime time slots. Obviously, United experienced it recently. A few weeks ago, the Wednesday, Saturday, or Tuesday, Saturday turnaround. Does Jurgen Klopp have a right to feel aggrieved about the scheduling of games, or is this, as Gary Neville sort of suggested on Sky Sports, him trying to lean things in favour of his club?
I think I do sympathise with Jurgen Klopp, and I get his point. But interestingly, when I was reading up about this, so basically what some of the managers have done is that they finish their Champions League game, and then all of a sudden, as soon as that Champions League game is finished, they start criticising the fixture list. A couple of days before their other fixture. So criticising it a couple of days before the other fixture is not going to achieve anything, because anyone can criticise it on the day. Whereas what actually, credit to Manchester United and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, they are contacted about their 12:30 kickoff 2 months ago when the scheduling came out, because they recognised, okay, this is going to be a problem. It's 2 months from now, but this is going to be a problem. Can it be changed? So they've pointed out that it needs to be changed. And it got denied. They said, no, it's not going to be changed. So that, to me, is the problem there, because that is a fixture that's been pointed out for them. They haven't even had to look themselves, and they need to change that fixture, and 2 months in advance when they could have changed it. So that to me is the problem, because that, there was simple, easy fixtures that were swappable. And I get the whole prime time TV thing. But again, you just got to think to yourself, for me, mental and physical well-being is the most important thing for these players. There's a lack of consultation over what the players want. I've never really heard how the players feel. I've only ever heard about, one, how the managers feel, which I get, they're speaking on their behalf potentially. And then 2, how the broadcasters feel, how the fans feel, everything like that. Whereas the people who are actually playing this game, who are putting their body through the physical stress and through the mental stress, haven't been consulted. And I think that's the most important thing that needs to happen. If these players can feel in a way that they can't play, then they're the ones who need to really be asked that question. But yeah, I do sympathise with Jurgen Klopp. I think it is a something that needs to be be addressed. Maybe the 5 subs. It will be interesting to see how the fixture list would go with 5 subs. Whether that would maybe ease it up a little bit, be it by with the managers having the ability to rest players. But yeah, I don't know. I think if more clubs can do what Man United do or did, and like flag up fixtures months before they're happening, then that actually gives more of a chance of them being rearranged, rather than just criticising a couple of days before. So I got Gary Neville's point. There's no point really criticising a couple of days before because you can't do anything about it. But I also do completely understand where Jurgen Klopp's coming from, and to publicly criticise like he did, I think is very important to flag it up as an issue.
Yeah, and I know some people might be getting annoyed of it, but it is trying to create a dialogue, isn't it? And trying to create awareness amongst fans and who maybe don't understand who maybe don't comprehend these things as well. As well as it's just raising awareness of the issue, isn't it? And sort of, by mentioning it so often, it's a bit like, it is sort of, putting focus on it and putting some emphasis on it. And it's a tricky one. Obviously, this season was always going to be a bit of a difficult one with the games kind of being put in such a small space of time, and it was always going to be quite difficult. And so, but I get it. Fans are at home; they can't watch their teams play, and so TV is pretty much the way to go for them, I guess, because they can't get stadiums. Obviously, now that's sort of changed for some teams, but it's a tricky one. Again, like it is a very tricky one, and I don't think there's an easy answer to it. Just before we kind of wrap up the news bit, I know there was also, in terms of this kind of whistle-stop tour into football rules, controversies, concussion substitutions, there's no real argument, really, right? That should be implemented. We'll talk about Arsenal Wolves in a bit, but that should be pretty straightforward, straight into the rule book, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, without a doubt, that has happened. I mean, it's kind of staggering to believe it's not happened already, to be honest. Because it's present in all other sports, and I think that obviously when we talk about it, the Arsenal Wolves incident, I think that that really showed that how serious this is, and how much that they need to be protected. So that rule should be in as soon as possible. It shouldn't really. I don't think there could be any opposition really to that coming in. So hopefully that's in as soon as possible, just to protect these players again.
Yes, sorry, apologies for that. There we go. Yes, absolutely. I don't think there's any doubt. And the whole the watching David Luiz kind of play on Sunday night wasn't a great look for the game. And also and as I mentioned with Dan O'Hagan's interview, I think best wishes go out to Raul Jimenez as well, and hope he doesn't have any serious injury, and doesn't hopefully he'll be okay. I think from Nuno's press conference they're encouraging comments regarding his outlook at the moment, so fingers crossed all goes to plan on that front. So let's jump in, and we're going to change up the structure a little bit compared to previous conversations. We're just going to talk about a team and pretty much their whole week. We're going to, rather than split Champions League and Premier League, we're just going to talk about the whole week. So let's talk about, and let's allude to some of the games going on at the moment to bring us up to speed. So we had Burnley drawing at Everton 1-1. That happened. I think Calvert-Lewin equalised after Robbie Brady's third-minute opener. And then at the moment, City are 2-0 up against Fulham. Raheem Sterling and a Kevin De Bruyne penalty, having put the Citizens up front. I know you've been watching a bit of the City game, Fulham game, before we came on air. So from the 20 minutes or so of action that you get, obviously City, they beat Burnley 5-0 last weekend, which was a pretty given their performances this season, it felt like a big result. And certainly they seemed a bit more fluid in their attacking play. So is there reason for optimism and belief that City are starting to turn things around, especially going forward?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it's really encouraging for City. I think I watched them versus Burnley, and they were very impressive. And likewise, for the limited time I saw them playing Fulham, they were fantastic. I think Kevin De Bruyne was at the heart of everything. again. But even Raheem Sterling just obviously got a goal today, so that's really good for him because his form's not quite been the same. But yeah, we talked about all the time, City really being unconvincing. That was the main word we used for them, but they're actually really starting to look convincing now. So that's really encouraging for them. It's interesting as a lot of people still hold them as their favourites to win the title, but considering their really poor start, it's quite odd. But when you've got that much quality in your squad, I think you're always going to contend. So, and when Pep Guardiola is your manager as well, so yeah, I think it's very encouraging for City. I think they've obviously got a nice run of fixtures, Burnley and then Fulham. I think any team would probably welcome those two at the moment. So we don't want to get too carried away. But 5-0, it's a big scoreline. Clean sheet, very important. So if they can keep a clean sheet against Fulham and maybe add a few more goals in, then yeah, they can be very encouraging for them.
Yeah, this is obviously coming up against a Fulham team who picked up, and we'll bring up last week's results. They picked up a really impressive 2-1 victory away at Leicester as well. So certainly they'll come into the game with a bit more confidence. But yeah, it's been an interesting week. Obviously, City, they went to Porto on Wednesday in the Champions League, and goalless draw wasn't a great result. And indeed, I don't know, have you seen what Porto said after the game? What Porto had to say about Man City after the game?
Yeah, I did see it.
Yes.
Briefly, a little jab there.
Yes, so to bring people up to speed, Fernandinho, apparently, according to Porto, lacked class. Porto's manager said that he would have done a whole lot better with Manchester City with those resources and that squad compared to Pep Guardiola in this game. So some really interesting comments. That was quite. I didn't know Porto and Man City were a rivalry, but apparently it is. But as you said, strong week for City. Obviously, I mean, is there any player sort of? I mean, we saw Riyad Mahrez score a hat trick against Burnley. He's obviously looked really good. Is there a reason why they've just suddenly been able to click into these, or is it just, as you said, is it just the quality of opposition that they've been up against?
I don't. It's a really difficult one to know because I think I was so shocked at their start to the season. I really didn't expect it to be like that, and I couldn't work out why. There's been a lot of this talk of teams have now found out how to play against City. So I mean, yeah, that would suggest that it is to do with the opposition. However, maybe it was just after the congested fixtures and stuff. Maybe it really got to them more than it did others. Maybe they are having to adapt slightly. I don't know. It's an interesting one. It'll be interesting to see if they can kind of establish some kind of form and a bit of a run, because obviously that may indicate whether it is just the kind of kind games that they're being given by the fixture list at the moment, or whether they can go on. But yeah, I don't know. We'll have to keep on the lookout for any more big score lines if they have any, or whether they replicate how they were at the start of the season, which is incredibly underwhelming.
Yeah, and obviously, I think providing we do a stream next week, we'll talk about it, but we can sort of allude to it now. Obviously, the next game, Premier League-wise, is against Manchester United at home, which should be, again, the Manchester derby, should be a really interesting game. Just having a look, yes, before then I have Marseille in the Champions League on Wednesday. So you would assume, because they've already qualified for the Champions League knockout stages, a rested team would play on Wednesday, and then surely a full-strength team against United, which is unfortunate for you, news for you and other Man United fans. I mean, given their uptake and form, are you concerned as a United fan heading? I mean, obviously it's early days. We still have a week to go before next weekend, and obviously with COVID, a lot of things can change in the blink of an eye. But are you worried about City heading into that derby next weekend?
Yeah, I would be. I think they are starting to hit form, and whether that's due to a kind fixture list or not, it doesn't matter. They are still hitting form, and I think we'll probably most likely be in more form than us. If we have a Champions League upset as well, that's even worse. Even worse for the Manchester United. So yeah, I am a bit concerned. I think it's a massive game really for both teams. Both started really poorly, and that game will potentially determine who's actually ahead of the other at the end of that week. So yeah, I am a bit worried, but we'll wait and see. Normally, when I'm worried, Solskjaer wins. So We'll see how it goes. But yeah, I think there's probably a lot of concern for Manchester United fans at the moment.
Some might say that when Solskjaer's on the brink of the sack, he somehow manages to get results in the big moment as well. So yeah, we can move on. It's a good transition to talk about Manchester United. Obviously, let's talk about last weekend briefly. Let's just take it back to last weekend, but then talk about PSG, and then we'll talk about the game coming up this weekend, or tonight even. Southampton, obviously, we talked about it a bit last week. They've been a pretty good team to watch. Ralph Hasenhutl's done an excellent job tactically, and at surely 2-0 down, I'm sure it must have been a sort of concerning, worrying sort of time. But then Edison Cavani stepped up and put in really two excellent headers. What was obviously it must have been a roller coaster of emotions for you as a Man United fan. So just talk me through, what was your kind of thought process throughout the game, and your overall takeaways from it?
I think obviously seeing the 2 goals go in, I think that was really really hard to watch. Again, there just seems to be a real lack of defensive leadership and defensive stability. That the goals that are going in, and same with when I think one of the goals, Fred gave away a free kick that right outside the box, and James Ward-Prowse scored from it. I think as soon as that free kick was given away, all Man United fans knew, all football fans knew it was going in. So I think that showed a real naivety to them, and I think that really just sums up their low levels of organisation at the back, which has not been nice to watch at all, really, because it's just it seems to be a reoccurring problem that doesn't get solved, and that brings into question are they defensively coaching them well enough? Because I don't believe these are bad players. I believe we do need another centre back, yes, but I still believe they should be doing better than that. So yeah, that was quite gutting. And then I think that Cavani, you take it as a positive, and I don't want to be negative, but I still just think when you're that reliant on a player's near post run, you really should have better kind of attacking movement and better attacking like formations and what have you, plays and everything, because both of his goals were exceptional to him. He's an unbelievably intelligent player. He his runs through the near post are almost unstoppable. And it worked, and it won Manchester United the game. Edison Cavani won Manchester United that game. So yeah, of course it was amazing for him. But then I still I take a step back, and now the happiness of that match has died down. Just from a level of analysis, I'm just not happy that you're that reliant on one attacking outlet who hasn't even played. So whilst this is probably a proper striker, as a lot of pundits are saying, with Martial's performances not being very good, and obviously the 3 points most important. So whilst there are those 2 positives, I still just think there's just too many areas of Man United's game where I'm just not convinced about.
Yeah, it's interesting. We put out a stat on our Instagram story. It came from Opta recently, and it talks about how many open play teams are getting shots in the box from open play, and United ranked 17th in the league, which was quite an interesting statistic. 4.2 shots per game, and yeah, 47% of their efforts coming from inside the box. So, it sort of sounds worrying. But then I guess if you have someone like Cavani, who is a legendary kind of penalty box poacher, does that alleviate any fears, or do you still? What do you? Does those kind of stats worry you? Given United throughout the years have had many penalty box strikers, whether it was Wayne Rooney when he played striker, whether it was Van Persie, obviously a legendary fox in the box, and even beforehand. Does that worry you at all, or is it just unlucky at this moment in time?
I think it does worry me, because I think it's there's just a real lack of identity with this Manchester United team and the way they play. Liverpool, it's high pressure. You know what they're going to do. It's those 3 up front doing combinations, fluidity, all of that. City, it's a passing game. Even Arsenal, you kind of know what they do with 5 at the back now. Chelsea, they flood players forward. and have high press as well. There's all of these teams have identity. Even teams like Southampton have identity of high pressure. Leeds, they're probably the most identity orientated team in the league. So all of these teams have an identity, and I think Manchester United don't. I don't really know what we're good at. And that sums it up, I think. And I think that does make me concerned. Obviously the most important things are 3 points. So that was important, and Edison Cavani is a good signing. I said that at the start. Don't agree with Manchester United's recruitment, but Edison Cavani as a sole signing is not a bad signing. However, I just think these issues are deep rooted. So even in Manchester United's successor at the moment, there's always going to be concerns there for me and plenty of other Manchester United fans.
Yeah, and obviously the one shining light has been Bruno Fernandes. Just a quick word on him, I guess. He's been phenomenal, and does he continue to sort of surprise you? I mean, it's not even been a year since he's been at Man United. It's coming up to it, but it's not quite there yet, and he's arguably established himself as United's main man at the moment.
Yeah, 100%. He's our best player. He's been absolutely amazing. And, whether you look at the amount of penalty kicks he scored and everything, it doesn't matter. He's from open play, his stats are still ridiculous. So I think, he is one of the Premier League's best players. It's interesting when you watch him because, yeah, he loses the ball a lot. But I don't think anyone minds because he's just constantly trying to play forward. He's trying to create. And to be honest, he's the only one in the team who does that. So, I think everyone doesn't mind when he loses the ball because the influence he does have when he gets it right. So, yeah, I think he's a massive influence for this team. And again, I just feel like we're so reliant on him. If we're not relying on Edison Cavani like we were against Saints, we've been relying on him for since last January. So my worry would be if he got injured and then what are we going to do then? Because I don't think we have a system that makes us produce chances and defend well. I think it's the individual players. The more and more I watch, the more I'm starting to believe that these players can achieve more with the right coaching. And the more I'm it's got to the point where even when we're winning now, there's still issues there and concerns there, which I think is a really worrying sign, especially when Manchester United release a statement saying they're sticking with Solskjaer.
Yeah. There are some rumors about the managerial post that I'll bring up in just a sec, but we should mention, obviously, after the Saints win PSG home game, it's you've got a very good track record against PSG. Unfortunately, it came undone on Wednesday night. Just watching clips of that game, it just appeared that United weren't clinical enough when the chances fell to them, and PSG sort of punished them and took their chances. Is it as simple as classifying that as the difference between the two teams, or is there more to that performance that kind of raises more alarm bells amongst yourself and other United fans?
I think, funnily enough, I'm going to contradict exactly what I just said and say that I actually, for once, don't think that is Solskjaer's fault. I think, I think Anthony Martial lost us that game. I think they were two easy chances to take. I think that, and Edison Cavani was really important in the build up to both of them with his movement. And I think it was fantastic play considering when we were down to 10 men. And I think, we would have been in the game if he scored one of them, let alone two. So I think that was the thing. And, obviously Solskjaer, he doesn't have any control over that. So I don't think that was Solskjaer's fault we lost that game. I don't think that was tactical. It's hard to judge it when you go down to 10 men, but I think it was like a real lack of being clinical from Manchester United in that game. And I think that's what lost it. I think the poorest performance was probably VAR and the reffing of that game. I think it was absolutely ridiculous. And to be fair to Harry Maguire and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, they didn't try and excuse Fred's headbutting. They said it's either a red or nothing. So I think that clearly highlights that it's a very obvious decision, and I don't understand how a qualified referee can go up to the monitor and say that's a yellow card. But we'll see. But I think, yeah, it was a really hard game to, I think, judge Manchester United based on what happened. But again, I think, you know, when people say that loss was due to Fred, I don't believe it was. I believe it was due to Anthony Martial missing 2 clear-cut chances that his teammates did really well to give him.
Interesting. So because a lot of the main thing everyone was sort of going on about on Twitter was that Ollie should have taken Fred off at halftime at the very least. Do you agree with that sort of sentiment that he should have been taken off at halftime, if not, before, he then got himself sent off?
It's a difficult one because on surface value, I'd say yes. However, then I think you look at it more deeply. Fred is not a red card player. Fred's rarely a yellow card player. He's a pivot who just pings the ball from side to side, basically. And if he has a conversation with Fred and he has the trust in Fred and says, look, I might bring you off. What do you feel? If you can calm down, and Fred assures him that he will, then I can almost see if he feels he has that relationship with that player to leave him on. Funnily enough as well, the challenge in the second half, the Solskjaer's defence was not a sending off. So if it was reffed correctly and that wasn't a sending off, then we wouldn't be having this conversation about whether Solskjaer said so. I will be the first person to criticise Solskjaer, but I think in this situation here, I don't think it's as black and white as in saying it's his responsibility to take Fred off, because Fred is not a player who plays with, has anger problems or something like that. He's very normally calm, very tame. So yeah, I'm not sure it's as black and white in that. However, I can see, we don't know what went on at halftime. If Solskjaer didn't really ask Fred or didn't really kind of even think about taking him off, I think that's an issue, because I think that's a little bit naive. But yeah, whilst, some people I think will say that's Solskjaer's responsibility to take him off, I think others will say that's Fred's responsibility to play for his manager. I think there's 2 ways you can look at it there. So yeah, it's an interesting one. I understand the uproar, but still, my thing is, if Fred got sent off, we still created 2 clear-cut chances that Anthony Martial should have finished. So for me, he is the most to blame for that result.
Okay, yeah. I can. You do make a good point. I kind of alluded to it at the start, a few minutes earlier when I talked about clinical nature. Yeah, Anthony Martial's he's not quite hit the ground running. It's fair to say, and so it's. I can see an argument being made there. Are you worried? I mean, we have sort of the group results. Leipzig obviously got that late winner at Istanbul to kind of keep themselves in the fight for the top two, for those 2 spots that go through to the next round. You obviously played them away on, I can't remember, for Tuesday, Wednesday, but you play them away coming up, at least in that final game. Are you worried about the situation that you're now in Champions League group stage wise? Given obviously we saw Leipzig take apart Tottenham last year, and that away from home, it could be a difficult game. I mean, are you worried about United's Champions League prospects heading into next week?
100%. I'm definitely worried. I think I predicted on an earlier show that they'd actually come third, so it actually wouldn't surprise me if we came third. But I think the difficulty is that you look at the game, we played them and beat them 5-0, and you think, okay, that's fine. But again, it's not quite as simple as that. We're playing them on their turf now. I think they do have exceptional players. I think everyone was really shocked that we beat them 5-0 because everyone assumes Leipzig to be better than that. And as well that psychologically that could lead to Man United having a bit of arrogance and a bit too much arrogance, and RB Leipzig feeding on that previous upset. So yeah, I think I'm definitely worried. I don't think it's a straightforward one. I think it's really difficult to call. The only advantage is obviously that Man United only need a point. However, I think all fans will be extremely angry if we just sit back. Because I think that's not the Man United way, and we've got a manager who knows that more than anyone. And he's done a lot of things wrong. If there's one thing he does right, is say that he understands the club. So hopefully we won't just sit back because I mean in the last minutes of West Brom, I think we ended up trying to hold the ball in the corner, and I was utterly embarrassed in front of everyone. So I think it's very, very concerning. I think you've got all Manchester United fans worried. Ones who say they were confident, I think, will be very quietly nervous. Because RB Leipzig, they're a very good team. They're a very strong team, as we all know. So I think they definitely have the capability to knock us out.
Yeah, it's going to be, as a neutral watching on, it's going to be a very difficult challenge. And it's not an easy week for Leipzig either, because they play Bayern Munich in a couple of hours, and then United, so it's quite a big week for them as well. I'll talk about a bit about the managerial rumors that have sort of come about with the United job, but just quick, more immediately, I guess, before the Leipzig game is West Ham this evening against a former manager at the United hot seat in David Moyes, who's had a very good start with West Ham. Obviously, pretty good home win against Sevilla, a 2-1 win on Monday night, and that's put them in the top half, top 5 or 6, I believe. So, I'm just going to have a look. Yeah, they're in the top 6 at the moment. So, again, is this a game that sort of worries you as a potential banana skin? Obviously, a West Ham fan in good form against. Obviously, you guys will be looking to recover from that PSG game. Are you worried about heading to the London Stadium?
Yeah, I am worried. I think there's not a game I'm not worried about at the moment. But I think West Ham, they've shown they have the ability to really hurt the top teams. And I think they are. I think I really praise David Moyes for what he's done. I think he's done a tremendous job. But I think it's instrumental that Manchester United win this game. I think, no matter how much you criticise Solskjaer or the squad, if they win this game and their game in hand, they're 2 points behind Liverpool, which is absolutely shocking to think that that's a possibility. So I think, it's very much needed. Needed win for them, and I think that the pressure's on. But again, we're sitting here saying the pressure's on against West Ham, like how times have changed. So I think it's going to be a very difficult game, though. I think everyone's nervous because of the players they have. Obviously, Antonio, Masuaku, Bowden. There's loads of players there who play really well and are really playing for their manager. So definitely worried, especially with the congested fixtures. Obviously, we didn't play not long ago, so hopefully that doesn't mean valuable players probably will have to be rested, which just brings more nerves.
Yeah, the way I can see West Ham hurting United is going forward. I feel like because obviously Antonio, and if they play Antonio, if it's Sebastian Haller, obviously it's slightly different, but both are able to kind of play that physical game against the likes of Maguire and Lindelof and kind of put pressure on them and make mistakes. And then you've got the likes of Fornals or Bowen or Benrahma, who are all kind of quick dribblers that, again, Wan-Bissaka's not had the greatest season at United, obviously, so far. There are a few question marks there, and those three can certainly drift into space behind the likes of McTominay or Fred or anything like that. And then this West Ham team does appear like stylistically they'd be able to, and tactically they'd be able to disarm United as well.
Yeah, no, 100%, and I think it would be really gutting for Manchester United fans. I think it's it's so important from a mentality point of view to bounce back from that PSG straight away. You say, okay, look, a lot of things happened in that game. We didn't finish our chances. Let's move on. Let's get it good, because then we have Leipzig, and if we lose against West Ham, lose against Leipzig out of the Champions League, and then we play Man City, what an awful week that could be for Manchester United fans. But it's a possibility, and I think it's a really tough week. And I think West Ham sum that up. I think they can hurt any team, and they have. So I think they really could hurt us. But I think all Man United fans, they're looking for a response. They're looking for a response from that PSG game. I don't think we're that angry. I think it's more of just as long as you respond well in the Premier League, then I think we'll be content.
And I feel like a 1-0 win would be celebrated by United fans. I think it is a pretty good West Ham team, so it's quite surprising. I wouldn't be saying this a few years ago, but it certainly feels like in this moment in time that a victory against West Ham would be a good result. Maybe I don't know. Do you find a draw be a good result as well?
I think it's got to be a win. It's just got to be all 3 points, and I don't think anyone will be satisfied with anything less.
So any predictions? I think it's going to be. I'm going to say 2-1 United. At the risk of jinxing them, I'm going to say 2-1 United.
I'm going to go. Normally, when I predict a loss, we get a win, so I'm going to go 2-1 West Ham.
Okay, there we go. Tactical. I like it. There was a few reports I saw in Germany. There was Christian Falk of Bild has said that Thomas Tuchel, the PSG boss, he is interested in becoming Man United manager, and United apparently are interested in him, if you are to believe his reports. So just quickly, Thomas Tuchel, would that be someone you would want in the Man United hot seat? I know, obviously, he's done well at Dortmund and PSG, but he's also got a reputation of, being, wouldn't say hard to work with, but certainly he's had his falling outs with PSG board and Leonardo, the sporting director, as well. So Thomas Tuchel, would that appeal to you as a manager?
I think on face value it would appeal, but then when you look at the board falling out, I think there's it would be extremely easy for him to fall out with the Man United board. So that would worry me. And I think that the whole thing with the managerial thing, the only reason I'm concerned and would want to switch is because there's managers out there right now who are available, i.e. Mauricio Pochettino. I think it'd be hard for anyone to probably trump him in terms of what Man United need, because I think he pretty much fits the role like a jigsaw. So yeah, I think obviously he's the number one, but Thomas Tuchel, I think it wouldn't be a bad appointment, but I would be worried with the board animosities created at his other clubs. So we'll see what happens. But I think potentially as well, he probably would be likely to move on from PSG some point in the near future. So it'd be an interesting one. Obviously, regarding Manchester United's recent statement, it looks like Solskjaer's not going anywhere, which probably again divides opinion amongst fans.
I've seen reports that say that Tuchel has already apparently told PSG he wants to go at the end of the season. So we'll see if that actually comes to fruition or not. And obviously there was another newspaper interview with Max Allegri in the Times, who said he'd be very keen on coming to the Premier League at some point. So I'm sure he'd be one that not just United fans, I guess, would be targeting him. He's been long links with Arsenal, and I'm sure there'd be a lot of teams that are looking at him as well if they could persuade him to come down to the Premier League. Let's move on from Man United. Let's run through Chelsea. So obviously goalless draw against Spurs. I don't know if there's a whole lot to talk about that, but a very good 4-0 win at Sevilla. And obviously Olivier Giroud starred for them. How deserving is he of more game time against the likes of a Tammy Abraham or Timo Werner, or should I guess the Giroud hype pump the brakes a bit and just because Werner and Abraham obviously there to for the future, and obviously have somewhat different qualities and even better qualities in Giroud in certain aspects as well.
Yeah, I think it's definitely the interesting take from that game. It's a good problem for Frank Lampard to have, definitely, and obviously all are very different at kind of different stages of their career. The thing I would say is that Giroud's almost the less attractive footballer of them all. You want to be playing, the explosive Timo Werner and Tammy Abraham, homegrown and everything like that. And then there's 34-year-old Olivier Giroud. However, I think this is one of the most criminally underrated strikers there's ever been. I think his best asset is making those around him play better. So I think that could definitely be used to Chelsea's advantage. Obviously, with congested fixture, it's really good to have three kind of strong strikers who they can, rotate in combination with. Obviously, the advantage of Werner is that obviously he can play out on wider. So that's nice for them there, because you're not going to be playing Tammy Abraham or Giroud on the wing or a Cam or something like that. So that's for me, it seems to be kind of Werner will play and then you rotate between Giroud and Abraham. But no one can deny 4 goals and you've got to be in contention. So I'd say if he's all fit, then potentially he'd have to start against Leeds, because I think Abraham has especially in that Spurs Chelsea game, he did miss quite a few chances. So you'd probably go with Werner and Giroud as the two most dangerous out of the 3 as of at the moment.
Yeah, he's it's as you said, it's a very nice problem to have. I'm sure a lot of teams would love an Olivier Giroud in their team, and it was he had a very good display against Sevilla, who, as United fans know, a very good team in Europe, and it's an interesting one for Chelsea. Obviously, there's a lot of competition for spots at the moment. Like the likes of Pulisic are back fit, Havertz is back fit, and then Ziyech and Mount, and you try to fit all these places in. Hudson-Odoi. There's so many players that Chelsea have. So let's talk about the Leeds game more specifically. Obviously, that comes up after the West Ham Man United game. Leeds, who picked up a really impressive win against Everton last week. This should be a really fun game, shouldn't it? And obviously there's a bit of spice between Lampard and Bielsa. We know about Spygate from a few years ago. So it has. I mean, this game has all the hallmarks of a potential blockbuster, doesn't it? With factoring the managerial rivalry, the sort of rivalry between Chelsea and Leeds, and the fact that these are two talented attacking teams that love to go forward, really.
Yeah, no, very excited to watch this game. I think it's really interesting. It's really interesting, I think, just from face value, as in just watching it. And I think it's also really interesting when you dig in deep with analysis. I think, after watching, countless videos and analysis on them, the way to beat Leeds is either to stop Calvin Phillips from dictating the play. And then from an attacking point of view, because they man mark, if you can turn one of their players, you're outnumbering them in the attack. And what Chelsea did really well against Sevilla is they bombed loads of players forward, and it worked really well for them. So I think there's definitely, the likes of Pulisic, he can definitely turn a player. Those players are probably going to play. It'll be interesting to see if Ziyech plays or not, because, obviously he does more of like kind of playmaker, provides the ball. But, if you've got Pulisic and Werner in your team, I can see that working very well. So tactically, it's a really, really interesting game. And very, very difficult to predict as well. But Chelsea, they're able to flood these players forward because not only Lampard but the players themselves, I think, just feel more secure in defence. They feel more secure with Mondi in goal, and they feel more secure if Thiago Silva's playing at the back. Or against Sevilla, Rudiger was really real calming presence across that back line. So I think definitely Chelsea can cause problems for Leeds, and Leeds cause problem for everyone because of their unique style. So it's going to be a really interesting game. Hopefully we've not jinxed it and it won't be a 0-0. I can't see that happening, but yeah, hopefully it'll be a really good watch.
I mean, if it's going to be a 0-0, it's going to be like 15 shots for each team, to be honest, knowing both teams. It's not going to be one of those dull 0-0s. That's going on, and it should be a really exciting game. As you said, I totally agree with you with stopping Leeds. Calvin Phillips being the key metronome and coming back. He's come back from fitness and from being injured, and has sort of lifted that team in terms of anchoring that team. And predictions wise, it's a really tough one to call. But I fancy a 2-2, and I fancy Patrick Bamford to score against his former team.
Oh yeah, that's you. Yeah, I think it's really difficult. I can see it going either way. I'll go with a 3-2 Chelsea, and I'll go with a Giroud winner.
Oh, very good. Yeah, it would be quite something if he came on and then got the winner. Absolutely. Just going through it. I guess those were the two teams that had sort of big weeks. Let's just go through some of the. Let's talk North London derby. So Spurs Arsenal on tomorrow. That's quite a big game. Spurs obviously had a goalless draw at Chelsea on last weekend, and then went to Austria and drew 3-3 at a SK. And then Arsenal, by contrast, lost at home to Wolves on Sunday, and then they beat Rapid Vienna pretty handily, I think 4-1 as well. So they had a pretty strong midweek game as opposed to weekend. So Spurs Arsenal. Let's first of all, who is the better team? And are we right to now kind of put Spurs above Arsenal? Because there was so much optimism about Arsenal coming into the season, but Spurs are top of the table. Well, if not top of the table, they're certainly up there, tied on points or something like that. So, is there a team? Do we consider Spurs the favourites in this game?
I think Spurs have to be the favourites. I think, it's not just a case of one team performing like really poor or the other team performing exceptional. I think it's both of them. I think, Spurs have started the season amazingly, and Arsenal have been really, really, after a decent initial start, been kind of really disappointing after their recruitment. So, it's an interesting game. It's a big game for both of them. I think I think if Spurs win, that is detrimental to Arsenal's confidence and belief as a team. But I think it's a fantastic opportunity for Arsenal to, what better way to regain some confidence and some form against your biggest rivals. So, yeah, I think definitely Spurs are the favourites for the game, but that could play into Arsenal's favour. Although Spurs midweek draw, I think, could be a blessing in disguise for Jose Mourinho and how he sets up the game.
Yeah, Jose Mourinho was talking about they had a few injuries, a few knocks to worry about. Obviously, Harry Kane's fitness is we expect him to play, but he did miss that midweek game. So fingers crossed he gets through. And I mean it's a fascinating one. I mean, going through, I guess, looking at each team personally. I mean, Spurs, they've sort of found a way to kind of become effective with the midfield of Højbjerg and Ndombele and Sissoko. Those three against the likes of, I mean, I'm not quite sure about Thomas Partey's fitness. I'll have a look in just a bit, but against a midfield of, it could be him, could be Granit Xhaka, could be El Neni, or whoever they kind of decide to put in. That midfield three of Spurs looks pretty good, and looks like if Spurs are going to win on Sunday, they would play a massive role, surely, in kind of, being able to help Spurs against Arsenal's counter-attacking threat, but also kind of pushing on forward and asserting themselves in the midfield.
Yeah, I think it's a very strong Spurs midfield that kind of achieves balance. You have Højbjerg in there who can, play as a dictator, but also kind of just intercept the play. And then you've just got Ndombele and Sissoko, very athletic two to have in that midfield, which really would be good for counter-attacking, but also making sure that Arsenal can't counter-attack you. So yeah, I think it is they have found a good balance in that midfield. I think Arsenal's problem is just a real lack of creativity. I just can't see where these chances are going to come from, and I can't see how they're going to get in the back of the net. So my worry would be if they concede early on, I just can't see this going any other way than the Spurs victory. I can't see how they'd come back. What's happened to Aubameyang, shocking. I mean, I don't think anyone saw that coming. Hopefully he'll re-establish his form at some point. I think he probably will. But I think it's difficult for Arsenal. I think they're going to definitely, they'll be in a really struggling if they concede early on, and Spurs do what they did to City. Because I think if Spurs go one up, I think Jose Mourinho is in complete control of that game.
Yeah, and obviously you'd expect the likes of Harry Kane and Son Heung-min in this form to kind of really tear apart that Arsenal defense, as United fans experienced a few weeks ago. They are a duo to be reckoned with, and surely will cause the likes of David Luiz and assuming they pick Hector Bellerin, which I sort of assume, even though Cedric's played well of late, I sort of assume that they'll go with Hector Bellerin. But you can imagine they'll cause problems for them as well. So, I mean, going into this, I mean, how under pressure is Mikel Arteta at the moment, would you say, as a neutral looking at Arsenal at the moment? Is he's not where, I mean, not to compare him to where Solskjaer is, but it does feel like he's retained his support, but now it's sort of starting to kind of turn away from him. So where do you feel Arteta is on sort of the pressure kind of meter at the moment?
I think particularly with this game, he's under huge pressure. I don't think that's pressure questioning his job, but I think that is still a lot of pressure. I believe he's a fantastic manager. I believe Arsenal have done really well to get him to come back. He's a tactician. We all know about his time at City. So yeah, I think his job isn't under threat. However, I think it's huge amounts of pressure, by having a derby game this weekend. I think that there's a lot of pressure as well coming from the whole Mesut Ozil situation. I think, what Arsenal are lacking is creativity. And, people are saying, well, why isn't Mesut Ozil playing? Again, I don't believe we know the full story. I don't believe it's a black and white matter. I think there's a lot going on behind the scenes there. So very difficult for people to speculate. However, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens then. I don't think that situation's really helped the pressure on him. Obviously, I think I saw midweek there were signs saying bring back Mesut and in the stadium and things. So I think that there's a little bit of maybe of a gap, dilemma between him and the fans' relationship at the moment. But yeah, I don't know. It's huge amounts of pressure. But like I said, if they can get the win here, that's a great way to start hitting form and some great confidence for all those players and him.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, who knows how much, how far Arsenal will go after this, but certainly a win on Sunday would certainly turn things around. So prediction wise, this will be the last game I ask you for prediction, because this is a quite massive one. I'm gonna say 2-1 Spurs. I like Jose Mourinho's chances against Arsenal. I think he's got a pretty strong past record against Arsenal as well. So I'm going to say 2-1 Spurs. I just feel like as the midfield three, I kind of alluded to, I think they'll be the key difference in my view. So
apologies to Arsenal fans, but I think I'm going with a 3-0 Spurs.
Interesting. Okay, a clean sweep. There's certainly, you watch them attacking wise recently. There is certainly concerns there. So I wouldn't be surprised if that result kind of came about. So we'll quickly skim through. Liverpool, just a quick word on them. Obviously, they drew against Brighton, which was, not a great result, but given how stretched they are for resources at the moment, you sort of understand that. And then getting the win over Ajax on Wednesday, and then obviously they play Wolves coming up. So Wolves, a tough opponent, as we saw. They beat Arsenal away, so they can certainly do it on away. But a Liverpool team that's still plugging away pretty well, and continuing to find ways to get points on the board. Whether it's in the Champions League, which they've qualified for the next round, or whether it's the Premier League. So any thoughts on Liverpool ahead of their trip, ahead of their game against Wolves, rather?
I think they seem to be coping really well, and I think they will. I think when you have that squad and that camaraderie and Jurgen Klopp creating that, I think it always is encouraging. Wolves is a more tough opponent. They don't have Raul Jimenez, so it'll be really interesting, because I'd imagine Fabio Silva will probably start, which is very exciting for people who've seen him develop. But I think they do miss a lot with Jimenez. I think ideally they testing a Liverpool back four, you'd want, in my opinion, one of the league's best strikers against it. So yeah, I think it will be it's a difficult test, but I think again, if they get through this, that just really just reinforces how strong they are. And if they, I think Jamie Redknapp was saying he believes if they had Virgil van Dijk and Joe Gomez right now, they'd 100% be favourites for the title, and I agree. That's the only reason they're potentially not mine. So yeah, more of a test for them, definitely against a tough Wolves side. But they seem to be coping really well. So maybe they can carry that on.
Yeah, and obviously it was two youngsters who got them that goal against Ajax. Nico Williams setting up Curtis Jones. So it's really exciting to see those two. Speaking as a local fan, it's really exciting to see those two obviously get some game time and get some time to shine. And obviously Kelleher as well, the goalkeeper, because we expect Alisson won't play against Wolves. So, as you said, Fabio Silva maybe, and he, who knows, he may have an excellent game against Liverpool. But obviously, Raul Jimenez, I'm sure, would have caused damage against a Liverpool defense that's hurting at the moment with injuries. And so, yeah, it's been ill. But if a win would cap off a pretty good week, obviously the Brighton draw, notwithstanding, wasn't the ideal result. But nonetheless, still decent week for Liverpool. Looking at the other fixtures, do any of the other fixtures catch your eye in terms of what you'd be looking forward to, or what you see as a important or must-win sort of game?
I think other than the main ones, I think Brighton Southampton will be an interesting game, because I think they're both similar in the sense that they play kind of high pressure games. I think obviously Man City, Fulham again. That's really big to their season. If they can start hitting the ground running, that will allow them to get some form ahead of the Manchester derby, which is massive. But yeah, I say other than that, it's really kind of the big games that really catch the eye this weekend. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. Everton, I think it's a little bit of a slip up against the Burnley side that you could take advantage of. Although Dominic Calvert-Lewin's goal was very impressive striker instinct. But yeah, I'd say other than that, it's probably just the main ones that we're looking forward to. But a good back-to-back tonight for West Ham, Man United, and then Chelsea Leeds.
Yeah, just a couple of things. I mean, you mentioned the Everton result. Obviously we had them hyped up as one of the big results, big teams to watch in terms of, could they maybe challenge for top four at last, having not done so in a while. Do you feel like now that we've seen them fall back to earth, what do you make of Everton right now? Like, are they closer to the top four than we thought, or at least are they further away than we thought, or are they still a team to be reckoned with, do you reckon?
I think they're definitely a team that can cause a threat. I don't think they're title contenders, and I think they will push the top four. I don't believe they'll get the top four. I think there's just too much class and too much class in depth of other squads. So yeah, I think, but then again, they've got very threatening players. I think that it's not when you play Everton, it's not a game you can go and rest a few players. I think it's going to have to be a fully strong squad for all Premier League teams. But yeah, I think it's interesting to see whilst they've fallen off. I don't believe Dominic Calvert-Lewin has. I think just watching his goal in that game, I'm so impressed with him this season. If I'm honest, I completely wrote him off. I haven't really rated him highly up until this season, and I'll admit that. But he's clearly worked on his game massively. His movement and instinct to get that goal was extremely good. And I think he's definitely a player, who can develop to be one of the Premier League's best strikers over the next couple of years. So yeah, I think it's difficult for Everton. It's a bad run of form, but I think in this year's Premier League, a bad run of form's maybe not actually as influential as it has been in the past, with a lot of teams slipping up. However, I just think that they just don't have the depth to really sustain. If Dominic Calvert-Lewin gets injured, you've got to have Cenk Tosun up front, which isn't really good enough. So I think they'll push the top four, push the top six, but I think nothing more than that really over a whole season, unfortunately for them.
Yeah, I brought Dominic Calvert-Lewin into my fantasy team this week, so I'm very happy that he's scored, having gone without him for a lot of the season so far. But yeah, it's interesting. I mean, obviously James Rodriguez hasn't quite hit the heights that we sort of expected him to, having watched him make an excellent start to the season. And you wonder if the injuries to Lucas Dean and Seamus Coleman are hurting them in terms of, creativity and productivity on the flanks, especially for the fullback roles. And it does seem like they are not quite hitting their stride at the moment. They seem that I wouldn't, it's obviously not panic stations for them, but it's not quite coming together as well as you'd have hoped. From my point of view, West Brom Palace is an interesting one because it's a potential game that could, I don't want to say decide the relegation zone come the end of the season, but it's one of those games that West Brom obviously need. They obviously picked up a win against Sheffield United, and Palace, they lost to Newcastle. So those teams you sort of see scrapping around. I mean, what do you make of the relegation zone at the moment with Sheffield United still yet to win a game so far? West Brom obviously getting that first win against Sheffield United last weekend, and obviously, you see Fulham and trailing at Man City, but they got their win against Leicester as well. What do you make of the relegation battle so far?
I think it's interesting. I think, for me, as soon as Fulham got promoted, I thought they were going to go straight back down. I still think they will. But, Sheffield United, it's a real shame to see. I think they're the club that everyone really likes. After hitting the heights that they did last season, it was always they were always not going to hit the same heights this season. But I don't think anyone expected them to be without a win until now. I think if they do get relegated, it will be a case of, stick with the manager, kind of take Chris Wilder down with you because of what he's done for the club. I think that's the respectful thing to do. But yeah, it's interesting. At the moment, you just really can't see any movement there. West Brom as well. I think there's been a few tensions between Slaven Bilic and the board and the owners. So I think that hasn't helped the start of their season. However, they have some really excellent players. So it's a difficult one to call. But then I think you look at the way the teams are playing, and for Sheffield United and West Brom, I do sometimes just look at their fixture list and think I just can't even see how they can really win. I think it's slightly more encouraging for West Brom, obviously picking up that 3 points, but I think it is definitely worrying for Burnley as well. That's a good point there that they've got. So I definitely think for me those are the four that will be competing, and I think it's such a. I think people underestimate how much mentally that influences the relegation battle. I think picking up 3 points, I think psychologically does so much for teams, and I think that can really help. So I think it's impossible to call, but I think I'm really concerned for Sheffield United in particular because I don't like seeing them down there.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what links them all is goal scoring, and that's ultimately what's going to decide how they do. Obviously, Sheffield United, Ryan Brewster hasn't. I mean, he's been given some games. Obviously, it's still taking time to adjust, but he's not been able to fire the blades up the table as yet. West Brom, obviously, Colin Grant's leading the front line, which is not. I mean, it's not the star name that sure or the sure thing that I guess that can help you stay in the Premier League. And even Fulham to an extent, Mitrovic hasn't. I mean, he started off pretty well and hasn't quite been scoring goals of late either. So it is going to be interesting. You'd expect three of those kind of teams to make maybe a January move for a striker or something along those lines to up their scoring. City Fulham has just finished, by the way, everyone. So I'm just gonna. It finished 2-0, so there was no changes to the scoreline. A solid win, I guess, a solid daily office for City. At least I guess for Fulham it'll be encouraging they didn't concede further goals, but yeah, it's an encouraging one. And actually, I'm gonna have a look at I'm sure the United West Ham teams are out, so we'll finish off the stream by having a quick look at those, and indeed they are. So if I just share my screen, we'll start with the Man United one, and we'll get your thoughts on it, Ben. Let's have a look. Everyone can see it. Cool. It should. Let's see. Having a look at it, Dean Henderson starts. I guess it's the big headline. And I don't really like why teams do this in number order. I think I've complained about this before. I prefer it to be in position order, sort of.
Yeah.
But I think the main one, I'm guessing the main takeaway in it, and I'm guessing it'll be the same that you've picked up on, is Dean Henderson starts.
Yeah, really, really surprising to see that. But really, obviously, I think the fact that De Gea is not in the squad, it seems, I think that's probably suggested his injury. I know he picked up a little knock in the last few games, so I think that potentially is it. But great for Dean Henderson. He's been needing game time, and I think Man United fans, although De Gea has been amazing, I think we do just want to see potentially what our future goalkeeper ultimately is going to look like. So really actually excited to see him. But yeah, it's a very interesting that Bruno Fernandes is on the bench.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about. Having just praised him on this show, it's quite typical that now he's on the bench along with Marcus Rashford. Who that one, I guess, because of his shoulder injury, makes a bit more sense. But then I guess with Bruno on the bench, you would sort of then look at Donny van de Beek to get more of an advanced role, which is exciting, I guess, right? As United fans to see him unleashed in that sort of number 10-ish sort of role.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think it's the same kind of thing with Henderson. I think it's like, whilst you're not seeing maybe your best or number one player there, It's exciting to see these other players starting. So yeah, really excited to see Donny van de Beek playing it. I'm also quite excited to see Pogba come back in, because I know I do feel sorry for him a little bit. He hasn't been good enough, but this ankle injury seems to be really bothering him consistently, which is not nice for anyone. Very, very surprised to see Martial in the lineup. I'm praying that he doesn't repeat what he did midweek. So as you can probably tell, he's not in my good books at the moment. So yeah, interesting lineup. But I think, the positives of Bruno Fernandes not playing is hopefully you can see Van der Beek. However, this could point out what I was saying earlier about how reliant we are on Bruno Fernandes. This could really expose Man United now. We can really find out kind of how much the system influences them.
Yeah, and I'm guessing it's a front three of Greenwood, Cavani, and Martial, which would be. See, Mason Greenwood has not had having had a sort of a breakout season last year, has not quite enjoyed a great season so far. So should be interesting to see if he makes an impact. And we've got the West Ham lineup in just a bit. Let me just screen share that one. Give me 1 second, and there we go. So thank you, West Ham, for putting the team in positional order and easy to understand. No real surprise there, to be honest. Having a look at it. Obviously, Mikel Antonio is not quite fit enough to play in the starting lineup. Obviously, he was substituted at half time against Villa, so I don't think there's any surprise here.
No, I think it's what you expect. Back five. I think I'd be really wary of Masuaku. He can really whip a good cross in, which will test our centre backs. I think Haller, he's really got to target Victor Lindelof. I think if I was West Ham manager, if I was Haller, that's exactly what I'd be doing. I think it's a massive weakness for Man United, and I think time and time again teams expose it, and we don't do anything about it. So I think that's definitely a very expected lineup. Same with Rice and Souček. The two in midfield. I think they'll bring a lot of stability and a massive screen in front of that back five. So very defensive from West Ham, but it's what we expect. But definitely can see them taking advantage of this Man United team, especially with Bruno Fernandes not in it.
Yeah, indeed. Antonio doesn't even make the bench, so he clearly has had maybe a setback, or maybe he was. I don't want to say. Yeah, maybe West Ham rushed him back against Villa, and maybe he wasn't quite ready yet. But Benrahma's on the bench, which is an interesting one, because I thought he did change the game with his cross for Bowen on Monday. So certainly one to watch for, should he be required to make a late impact. But yeah, I don't think there's much more to add about that West Ham lineup. I think that's a pretty bog standard one, I guess we sort of alluded to. So with that, I guess that will probably be it for us. I mean, for today's Quaran-Stream. So with that, Ben, thank you as always for coming on. It should be an exciting weekend of football. I'm guessing your plans are, at least for this weekend, watch the 2 games tonight, and then the North London derby. Am I right in just guessing that?
Yeah, no, 100% correct. I think they're going to be really good. If they're not, good fun watch, especially if we win.
Of course. I guess those games are gonna be exciting. I'm gonna be probably watching Bayern Leipzig. So I'm quite interested to see how those teams stack up against each other. But that'll do it for us again. Thank you very much for watching. Obviously, as I said, the Dan O'Hagan interview is coming next week, which should be a really interesting conversation. And we will be back at some point next week, hopefully, definitely with a Quaran-Stream, and if not earlier, due to some other stuff, some Raw Sport Weekly shows as well, particularly with the F1. So we'll be back next week. Thank you for joining us, and have a good weekend.